Happy Monday. It's October 16th, 2025, and time for your Monday market update. Thanks so much for watching. Well, let's take a quick look at our Montgomery County numbers for the last 7 days before we talk about what's happening in our market. We had 136 new listings, 110 go under contract. So many weeks now, we're starting to see more homes being newly listed than going under contract, meaning we are definitely getting more inventory, which is needed in order to return to a fair and balanced or a more normal market post-COVID. We had 81 closed sales, 64 price changes, 1 expired, and 30 currently on the private network. Now, what are we talking about with a fair and balanced or a normal market? And that has to do with inventory and interest rates. So pre-COVID, we actually have not had a fair and balanced market in a very long time. We have been in a seller's market since the recession. Since about the middle of the recession, we had a buyer's market in 2012, lots of really low prices, lots of deals, lots of buyers having power in the market. But ever since about I've been in real estate since 2016, I have never seen a buyer's market. So even prior to 2014 is probably the last time we were anywhere near a fair and balanced or a buyer's market. Now, again, the way that we sort of decide if it's a fair and balanced market is the months of inventory. We measure our inventory in how many months it would take to sell out of whatever is currently listed, if nothing else hit the market. 4 to 6 months inventory is a fair and balanced market. Anything under 4 months inventory is a seller's market, and anything over 6 months inventory is a buyer's market. Again, we haven't had a buyer's market since 2012. So we have been in a seller's market for a very long time. We are still in a seller's market. We will continue to be in a seller's market for the foreseeable future. However, we are coming out of such an extreme seller's market. So in 2021 and 2022, we only had about a half a month's inventory across the county. Now we've got more like 1.5 months inventory. So are we in a buyer's market? No, not even close. But we're at least heading a little bit more for a fair and balanced market. In 2016, when I started selling real estate, we had about 3.5 months inventory. So almost a fair and balanced market, but not quite. So we're headed more for that direction. Again, not going to be in a buyer's market anytime soon or even a fair and balanced market, but we're heading out of less extreme of a seller's market. So we're seeing more and more inventory every month as we go by. Now, we've got a couple other topics to discuss. Obviously, the government shutdown, we're in like day 13 of that. Now, today is Columbus Day. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I almost forgot. Kids are off school today. So the markets are closed. But we are seeing, so we don't have any data in terms of interest rates for today, and banks are closed. But also the federal government has been shut down for about day 15. And so we didn't get the BLS jobs report on Friday. So there's a lot of things that we're starting to hit hurdles with the government being shut down. FHA is now going to take a little bit longer as we have more and more, as this continues, it's going to create more and more problems for the housing market as well. Now, according to Freddie Mac on Friday, we closed out last week with 6.3%. It was the 30-year fixed mortgage rate. 5.53 was the 15. We don't talk about the 15-year rate often, but it is something we probably should talk about because it is an option for people if they want to get that lower rate. If you can afford to do a 15-year mortgage, you can get a lower rate if you can do that. So just something to throw out there. Now, the highest for this year we saw in mid-January was over 7. So we are still in a great place for our mortgage rates. They're in the mid to low 6s, which is fantastic. Now, of course, this is not the rate that you're going to get when you call your lender and say, hey, I'd like a 6.3% interest rate. That's not the rate that you're going to get. That's the rate that Freddie Mac is lending at. So it's just something to be aware of. You'll get probably, high 6s, but you're still under 7. So this is a huge improvement. Now, if you get an FHA or a VA loan, those loans can be lower. They come with other fees and other stipulations, but just something to keep in mind. Interest rates are healthy. We'd love to see them come down further, and I think they will. We've got a new Fed chair that will be coming to office next year, and we've got some ideas on who that might be. And, could potentially be someone who's, is in favor of more cuts. So we are potentially going to have 2 more Fed cuts this year, but we might only have 1 and we might have none. So we'll see what happens with those meetings as they approach. But the biggest change we're seeing right now is the inventory. So locally, because of course, nationwide, you're going to hear different stories about different states. here in the Midwest, here in the Chicagoland suburbs, we still have very low inventory, but it's increasing. And that's going to be a change. So for you buyers out there, there's going to be more to choose from. For you sellers, there's going to be more competition. So I hear some people saying, oh, we're going to wait for spring. We're going to wait for spring. There'll be more to choose from in spring. That is likely true. But there will also be more competition from sellers, potentially more competition from buyers, depending on what interest rates do. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what's going to happen in the spring, but we are likely going to have more inventory, potentially lower interest rates, but again, we don't know on that. But one thing to talk about though is that prices are coming down seasonally. So right now, if you look at the average sales price in the Chicagoland area for mid-June, it was about $476,000. Right now, it's at $434,000. Now that's normal for seasonally adjusted. We tend to see lower prices right now. We tend to see less competition. If you look at showing time, we're on this trajectory where we're headed down through the end of the year as we head into the holidays. We're having less and less showings every week. However, we are on pace with about mid-February. So our market right now is comparable to our market in mid-February. So it's not like it's terrible. We have quite a few people that are getting into the market in mid-February preparing for the spring market. So it's not a bad market, it's just not June. Or March, April is the biggest push that we see for closings in May and June. So it's not that time of year. Last year's June average was $442,000 as opposed to $476,000 this year. And our October number last year, average sales price, was $394,000 as opposed to $434,000. So prices around here are still up year over year. They're headed down as a seasonal normal. That's what we see this time of year. We see less competition in the market. We see prices come down, but they are not down in the Chicagoland area. So if you're waiting for prices to come down, I don't know that you're going to see that. We might see prices level out, but year over year, prices are still increasing in the Midwest and our Chicagoland area. Year over year, yes, we're getting more inventory, but prices are continuing to go up. There are other parts of the country that are seeing prices come down. We're just not one of them yet. So that's some things to think about as we go into the winter months. There are still benefits to selling all year long and participating in various markets depending on what your motivation is. So if you have questions about that and whether or not you should get into the market right now, give me a call. I'd love to be your resource. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye-bye.